I invite you to turn to the Gospel according to John, chapter 2. Gospel according to John, chapter 2. And we are going to dive in here in a little bit different fashion this morning. I wrote a fine outline this morning. I did not print it for your packet because it was just an outline. And then I left it at home. So we're winging it. But I have great confidence in the Spirit in me. And together we will go about this. Gospel according to John chapter 2, beginning with verse 1. On the third day, a wedding took place at Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine was gone, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no more wine." "Woman, why do you involve me?" Jesus replied, "My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Nearby stood 6 stone water jars, the kind used by the Jews for ceremonial washing, each holding from 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus said to the servants, "Fill the jars with water." And so they filled them to the brim. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the master of the banquet." They did so. And the master of the banquet tasted the water that had been turned into wine. He did not realize where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew. Then he called the bridegroom aside and said, "Everyone brings out the choice wine first, and then the cheaper wine after the guests have had too much to drink. But you have saved the best till now." What Jesus did here in Cana of Galilee was the first of the signs through which he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. May God bless the reading of his word. When we read the Gospel according to John, there are some things we need to be aware of. Every Gospel writer has his own way of making things together. One of the things in John that we should look for and notice when we're reading him is that he likes to speak in sevens. In numerology, 7 is a perfect number. It's the perfect number of days in the week. Hence, God said it was very good. It's perfect. Okay. John likes to speak in sevens. This is the first of 7 miracles that John talks about this week. There are a lot of miracles in the Gospels. John chose 7 that he specifically felt told the story of Jesus and what he was trying to do. You see, because when you get to the end of the Gospel of John, he says, "I could have wrote so much more." He said, if the sky was parchment and the sea was ink, I couldn't have covered everything that happened when Jesus was here. Okay? He said, what I have written down are all the things necessary that you might find salvation. So when we're reading John, we need to pay attention to the 7s, and then we need to stop for a moment and consider, why was this necessary to be saved? To help me be saved. We know, first of all, that it helped the disciples. Because at the end of it, the very last verse, he says, "And they believed." Mm-hmm. Now, the disciples go into believing and out believing pretty regularly. You know? In the moment, they believe. in the long, it kind of gets tedious sometimes because they fall back into old habits. You know, this is one of the things that we used to teach people when we taught people how to work at the altars with people who were coming to pray. One of the things we taught them is that after this prayer, they needed to stick with them. To stay with them, because in the upcoming days, the moment might fade. And they needed somebody there to remind them. John is reminding us. John is reminding us. The wedding in Cana, it's in Galilee, which means, if you don't know the area, if you don't know the area, Cana is less than a day's walk from Nazareth. Okay? It is near the Sea of Galilee. Okay? And it's just a small wedding. They only invited family. Which means about 90% of the people who lived in that area were invited. Because they're all family. So when it says that Mary was there, not a surprise. When it says that Jesus was there and all his disciples, they were invited. Because they were family. A Jewish wedding of Jesus' day was an amazing thing. They planned for it. You know, the average betrothal was 1 to 3 years. And during that entire time, you think people plan weddings now? They planned that wedding. Not because they wanted it to be amazing, but because it had to be amazing. Weddings were important. Mm-hmm. Weddings were a statement. They not only were a statement of the commitment that was being made between this man and this woman, they were a statement of the commitments being made between their families and also their status among all the other families. The average wedding lasted 7 to 10 days. 7 to 10 days. And during that time, the bride and groom's families were expected to feed, bed down, and supply drink for everybody who came, for as long as they stayed. And when I say expected, I mean expected. If you ran out, from now on, when you walk down the street, they'd say, oh, it's them, they ran out. You know them. They don't supply for their friends. They don't take care of their family. They become lesser. Worse than that, if they run out too early, they can be legally charged. It's against the law among the Hebrews for them to run out. And so when Mary says to Jesus, they've run out of wine, this is not just a, oh, poor things, they ran out of wine. No, this is serious. And their family. You don't want that to happen to family. And so, she looks to Jesus, and you remember, it hasn't really said much, especially John hasn't said anything about Mary, really, up to this point. But even in Luke, where we talk about Mary a lot, in between the birth she's so confused that her son is acting so weird. So instead, John tells us that Mary looked at Jesus and said, "We've run out of wine." Because John knows what Luke told us, and that was, she stored this in her mind and in her heart. Mm-hmm. Even though we haven't heard anything about it, deep in her heart, Mary knows that this boy is special. Not special ed, special. And so, Jesus looks at her with that loving, sweet look that a child has for his mother. And he says, "Woman." It's a term of endearment in a rather sarcastic tone. What are you asking of me? Don't you know it is not yet my time? I'm only here for the party. Me and my bros, we came for the party. This has nothing to do with who I am or what I'm going to do. And Mary just looks at him again with that mom look. And says to the servants that are standing there, "Do whatever he tells you." Because she knows she's already got it. It doesn't matter what he's saying with his mouth. His eyes have told her already, "I'll take care of it." And he explains to them what to do. Get the water. 120 gallons of water minimum. We ain't going to run out again. This is a one-shot thing. 120 gallons. Maybe as much as 180 gallons. It says they held 20 to 30 gallons each. And he brings it, and there's no... It kind of reminds me of a scene out of Mary Poppins. You ever seen Mary Poppins? At one point, they went to the chalk drawings, and Bert says he's going to make it happen. And he says, you wiggle your nose, and you do this, and you do that, and you close your eyes, and then you jump. You know? And she looks at him and says, you have to complicate everything. There are no words recorded. There's no blessing. There's no waving of the hands over the waters. And you might notice one thing here. Later on, we make a pretty big deal about Jesus telling the waters to be calm and that they obey. But in John, we find out that Jesus has sovereignty over the water in the very first miracle. Mm-hmm. It shouldn't be a surprise later, but it is. Of course, he didn't turn the ocean into wine, so I guess. We have this situation, and Jesus says, "Fill them with water." Okay, now take it to the head of the feast here, because the family's not taking care of this. They have a head man who's in charge of everything, making sure that things get served, that the wine gets brought out, that everything's taken care of. And he takes a sip. They say, "Here, we have a new batch of wine. Taste it." And he tastes it and he goes, "Whoa! That's really good stuff. Why did you you wait so long to bring that out? Normally we serve this first, little bits of it, just enough to get people tipsy. Then we bring out the Mogan David. We bring out the cheap stuff. And from that, the story's been told now. He's told the story, so what are we supposed to get out of it? What are we supposed to get out of it? Besides, Jesus is a good boy and does what his mama wants. What are we supposed to get out of this? One, an important thing happens. Jesus takes sovereignty over the water. Because even though the water that they're dealing with is precious, it is what they drink, what they use every day. In the Hebrew culture, and in the culture of the day where they lived, water was scary. Water was where the scary things lived. The Leviathan, the evil spirits. Later on, when he throws the evil things into the pigs immediately run to the water. They went home. Okay. So John says, Jesus has charge over the water, and it does what he tells it. Jesus has charge over the evil things. First thing we learn. Second, Jesus has the power to transform. He transforms the water just by the thought. He doesn't even speak the word. He doesn't even speak over it. He is the word. He just says, okay, water, no longer water. Transformed it. Jesus has the power to transform. He took something less and made it into something more. That's an important second thing to know. Jesus has the power to transform. And when Jesus transforms, what happens? It's not any old run-of-the-mill transformation. You're not a little better for today. When Jesus transforms, it has now become the very best wine. When Jesus transforms us, we become the very best us. And the disciples believe. And the disciples believe. So should we. If you're going to count on Jesus to change your water into wine, then you need to believe that the transformation is real. And that you are now his best and ready to serve and be served. As you go from this place today, consider your transformation and go in his grace.